Hi everyone, we're here today with Mohsen Gul and we're very excited, but I will let him introduce himself. So can you introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm Dr Mohsen Gul. I'm a technical advisor here at UNDP Pakistan, and I am a third culture kid, born, brought up in Saudi Arabia, then moved to Pakistan, and have been very lucky to work across the globe on several issues, and really looking forward to the discussion today.
Thank you so much, Mohsen. Excited to have you on board. How would you describe your job is my question.
My job is quite interesting. So most of the days it is very strategic. So I work on strategy development around green recovery, climate change, youth engagement, and meaningfully engaging young people across different domains of what UNDP works on. So, and you have to wear multiple hats someday. Someday you're a negotiator, someday you're a project manager, someday you are just working on strategic thinking and forward thinking. But one thing I really love about my job is the optimism it brings and the hope or the potential that I get to work with. And often I come across a lot of young people who just keep adding to that enthusiasm and potential. So I really look forward every day to a new emerging trends that we are working around and working with.
That's very exciting and very different from what a typical week would look like. So let's see, how would you describe your typical week or typical week at work?
Typical week usually start because of COVID. It's usually work from home these days. So some days you have very early meetings which you can even take in your pajamas and home clothes. Some days you have to be more actively dressed and go into very important meetings where some decisions are made. For instance, just today we were in a meeting with the Planning Commission, which is the development arm of the government. So we were thinking on developing a national youth roadmap or a framework. Some days are more internalized in a way that for me to write and do research on climate issues and things which we can actively work on. For instance, lately we've been working on a women-led green jobs project. So a lot of work has been around desk review, sitting in our home on computer, looking at what models are being used across the globe, and then contextualizing them and localizing them in context of Pakistan. Other than that, I get to do a lot of workshops and training with young people and staff members at UNDP and other development partners, for example, UNICEF, who's helping us establish a youth policy lab. So I've been typically going on to do some workshops and arranging courses or developing content for these and sorts. So it's always happening, and there's something going on one after the other throughout the week.
Oh, that sounds marvelous. So some of the projects you're working on, can you describe? I'm particularly interested in the Green Jobs project you just mentioned.
Sure. So for me, when 2022 started, my New Year resolution was to create green jobs through any of the jobs I work on. So one of the jobs I do is with UNDP, but I'm also engaged with the Asian Development Bank and British Council. So through UNDP, I was very lucky to early on this year be engaged in a project around women-led or inclusive or gender-inclusive green jobs, which we're trying to create at the national level in Pakistan. So luckily it resonated with my personal goals as well. The idea is for us to work towards a national policy framework to begin with, where we identify what are the barriers, what are the gaps, what are the key opportunities to introduce young women in traditional and non-traditional economic sectors. For example, did you know less than 1% young women work in energy sector in Pakistan? Why is that so? We're trying to unpack this to understand the reasons, and then we're not just looking at the challenges, we're going one step ahead and doing futures thinking, where we are also coming up with a plan as to how we can better introduce new roles in terms of skills development, what capacity building support would help young women take up science and technology sectors. Then we're not just stopping there, we're also piloting some job roles in different sectors, including energy, textiles, agriculture, tourism, so on and so forth, those which we've identified as the priority, not just of the people, but also of the government, and actively trying to identify pathways through which young women's role could be mainstreamed in green economy.
Thank you. I'm interested in the fact that did you study any of these subjects at university?
Yes, luckily I've been a graduate of environmental sciences. I started my journey at Government College University, Lahore. So I did a bachelor's in environmental sciences. Then I got lucky to get a scholarship and go to UK. So I did a master's in environmental management. That is where entirely I studied most of the things I talk about here at University of Nottingham. Then from there on, meanwhile I was also working, so I was getting a lot of real-time opportunities to test a lot of knowledge that I was gaining. Then I did my PhD. My PhD was in environment and society, or sustainable development, and that's where it went slightly beyond environment, and I was trying to look at the social and economic dimensions as well, and that sort of has helped me so far to understand how vulnerable groups like youth could be better engaged and worked with. Then I went on to do a research fellowship at the University of Oxford, and the whole fellowship focused on how youth could be better engaged in Asia Pacific context or in Pakistan. So that has become a full circle. In a way, I was able to gain knowledge not just about the environment, but all other contributing factors which make the whole experience of meaningfully engaging young people effective.
That is very interesting and very impressive. Did you ever think that you'd be doing the job you're doing right now?
Yes and no. I think one of the, as I've said previously, one of the good things about this job is the nature keeps changing, and I like that challenge as it comes up. Initially, when I did environmental sciences, I wanted to go in more scientific and engineering based components, but then I realized that my strength was the development sector, and as with any person's life happens, the opportunities I were getting were very development sector oriented, so I recognized that maybe this is what needs to be done. My first job actually was at a local hospital in Lahore, working on a student leadership program. So that is where I automatically became engaged working in the youth development sector. Now, environment was my technical niche, and youth development was something that paid me, right? So ultimately, I tried to bring them together, and luckily, as the world realized that environment and climate change were important issues to work on, and a youth momentum started to build up, I got lucky that more job roles started to emerge which would converge both climate or environment and youth together.
That's very interesting. So, in terms of contribution, how do you think your job contributes to the environment or climate activism or climate change?
Well, like anyone should believe, my job does make a meaningful contribution. I think for me, the biggest win is not just thinking at the policy level, but also thinking on how this translates into action on ground. And because I get to work with multiple organizations, I think I'm in a very at the moment in a very strong position to influence a lot of decisions, and a lot of not just decisions but policy decisions, but also money. Where does it go, right? And that, I think, is power. And as a young person transitioning into adulthood, I've realized that, okay, what was my passion, where I wanted young people to be celebrated and worked upon. So that, I think, is the most meaningful contribution for me at the moment, that I'm able to be the voice of those who not necessarily have voice in rooms like this.
That is a very true statement to make, and you have a very big responsibility. It's
Yes,
very impressive. What makes you happy in this job?
I think seeing the impact on ground, seeing people actually achieve their goals which which we had set initially for them, or they had set with us. So for me, that's the biggest change. But other than that, the selfish motive for me at the end is all that learning I gain from this. That is the high moment for me. And secondly, I get to work with more than 50 countries through my portfolio. And imagine the kind of impact I can make, even if at least one person in any of these countries. That's what gives me motivation, that I need to keep going on and on and on. Of course, there are moments when you feel frustrated or sad about whatever is happening in the world, but good thing about our work is, or in the development sector, it's always feel good and do good, right? So that's the feeling at the end of the day I have, and I continue to build on that.
50 countries, that's impressive, Dr. Mohsen.
Thank you.
What skills and experience do you need, would you suggest a young person needs for this kind of a role?
There is no shortcut, a lot of hard work, a lot of smart work as well, a lot of dedication and willingness to learn and unlearn. There's a whole concept of unlearning. We all come up with our biases, we all have our own ways of looking at world. When I sit at UNDP Pakistan, I have to wear a different hat than when I'm sitting in Manila or in some other country in Pacific. So that recognition that every place and every area has a different culture you have to work around. You really need to understand the local context. You need to respect the indigenous knowledge of the people who you're working with. For me, that was the key. And secondly, don't be afraid of looking out for opportunities. Don't wait for that eureka moment or one moment where you'll get the right job. There's no such thing as that. The way I entered the UN system, I kept volunteering enough that they were able to recognize that this person should be brought on our payroll. So that's important. You just need to keep striving. Nobody's going to come and give you the lunch on the plate. There is no such thing as free lunch. So you just keep continuously working towards a vision or a goal. And even if you don't have a plan, just keep aspiring to become whatever you wish to become, or keep exploring. And I think within that you'll get your answer. A lot of people spend time thinking of what could they do rather than not doing it. Just do it. What else would go wrong? And as Steve Jobs said, there is no, everyone would say no to you unless you ask. So ask people, talk to them, what would they do? If you were listening to me and you write to me that you want to be engaged in one of the projects, what will happen if I not reply to you or if I reply to you? And from my experience, most of the people are very kind and nice when you write to them or talk to them or seek their mentorship or inspiration. So just keep going and you will find your vision. As I say, my life goal comes from Disney movies. So I always say, as in Finding Nemo, it's Dora says, just keep swimming, and you'll find your way, and just keep doing the hard work.
I think that's an excellent advice to the youth. We should just ask.
Yes.
That's a very good way to sum it up. Let's talk about money. Does your job meet your financial expectations?
Yes, more than I thought it would. For a 31 or a 32-year-old person in our country, I think I'm in a very lucky bracket to be paid the way I'm paid. But that does not mean that a lot of people in my position get paid that much. It's just a reflection of how much more effort you have to put on daily basis, and also don't run after money. Money will follow if you are dedicated to your goals. For instance, when I did my PhD, everyone told me, oh, that's going to make a dent on your salary. But that's not true. I know a lot of my PhD colleagues who are just overqualified graduates being paid what a graduate would be paid for. The reason I might be paid more would probably be because of the effort I've done to understand how the technical knowledge could be made practical or could be used in our work context. So it's important that if you are being inspired by someone or their portfolio, don't look at what salary they're getting, look at what is the range of work they're doing. And ultimately, you will reach a point where people will financially compensate you as well in the right way.
Thank you. So you've given us amazing advices. What would be an advice you'd give to a youth who would want to do a job like yours?
Okay, I think you have to be clever enough how to look for opportunities. Use all 24 hours in a day to see, okay, if for instance I'm working in Pakistan from 9 to 2, is there any other country I can work from 2 to 5? Is there another context where maybe if I'm not being paid, even volunteer, do I have enough time to do some research? Can I write something? Can I, for example, record a podcast, record videos, make a YouTube channel, anything. But you need to do much more than what an average person would do. I usually call myself as a madman, but that's not entirely a bad thing. For me, why I'm like this is the reason because every day I identify so many issues on daily basis and I'm like, nobody's working on this, and that's frustrating, right? So I'm like, maybe I need to do something about it, and that's one of the reasons I end up doing it, right? So just keep trying and striving to make that dent in the system, and hopefully you will find your way around.
Thank you, that is very good advice. How do you see your future in this career, and how do you feel you will evolve eventually in the future?
So I have sort of evolved very recently. Just like any career, there have been moments where I feel lost, where I feel, is this enough? Do I need to do more? Do I need to do something different? One thing about being in the consultancy business is it's lucrative, but it's very, uncertain. So uncertainty prevails on your head all the time. What beyond this? And that is a pressure that I or anyone would have. So I've been very lucky to transition into a role I will be taking on at the University of Cambridge very soon. So I tried and figured it out that this was my true calling. But for anyone who's struggling to do so, make a chart. I always say, sit down, write the pros and cons of this job, and anything which you aspire to be, what will that add to your portfolio? If it's not adding anything new, then maybe you need to rethink that why are you going to take it? There might be monetary reasons, job security, moving around the world, anything could be the key reason, but you have to be clear on it. And then you need to ask yourself, how does this fit in my current vision of growth, and what is my 5-year plan or 10-year plan? For instance, I have no clue what my 5 or 10-year plan is, but at least I know that what I'll be doing is something that makes me happy. So happiness is a key indicator for me making decisions, but it could be something different for someone else. And mostly it's money. But I would say, even when you're making decisions for money, what I did when I needed money was I took a job which was for my passion, and then I found a job which was just paying bills. So even if I was miserable in the other, I would compensate by doing good work in something that was close to my heart. Because you have 24 hours, so does Steve Jobs had, so does Bill Gates, so does anyone else. So if they can use most of the day, why can't we? We have more energy, we are more young, we are more enthusiastic, and we have more potential, hopefully.
That's wonderful advice. 24 hours we need to use.
Yes.
Anything else you'd like to share about the green job, the green consultancy you're doing? Is there any advice that you'd like to share?
One thing I've learned is never talk about one job at the other job. So nobody's going to celebrate you for saying I do 7 jobs. But the clever person would do their excellent work in one job and then close that and go to the other and do the good work there. You need to be known for the theme or the niche you work in, rather than the place you work at. If you're being defined by UNDP, then you're not doing the right thing. You have to be a portfolio or something in a field rather than at a place. Because a place might go someday because of the uncertain world we live in. But your knowledge, your strength, and your professional acumen will stay. So focus on a niche or focus on an area of growth rather than where you want to end up.
Thank you so much. We've learned a lot, and clearly I have learned in terms of my own career directions from you. So it was lovely speaking
Thank
with
you.
you, and I hope you have a nice day.
You too. Thank you.